Hello there! Welcome to the series of lessons on the tenses. Do you know that there are 12 tenses of verbs? Yes, you heard it right. There are 12 tenses, and we will take a closer look at each one of them in this series, starting off with a very common tense in the English language, the simple present tense. Again, if you're new to my channel, please do subscribe and click that bell so you'll get more updates. Okay? Alright, so it's learning time! There are three main verb tenses in English. We have the present, past, and future, and these tenses are divided into four aspects. We have simple, progressive, perfect, and perfect progressive. Now, there are 12 major verb tenses that English learners should know. In the simple tenses, we have simple present, simple past, simple future, and we also have the perfect tenses, present perfect, past perfect, future perfect. And another one is we have progressive or continuous tenses, present progressive, past progressive, and future progressive. And the last one is perfect progressive tenses. We have present perfect progressive, past perfect progressive, and future perfect progressive. So these are all the verb tenses that we are going to discuss in this series of lessons about tenses. But first, we're going to talk about simple tenses, specifically about simple present. Of course, we're going to cover all these tenses in our upcoming videos, and we will do it one tense at a time so you'll get a better grasp of each topic. Alright? Now, when do we use simple present tense of the verb? We use this to express the idea that an action is repeated or usual. So our keyword here is the word repeated and usual. So what are these? These are actions that we usually do. Examples are habit, or we could have a hobby, or daily event, or something that we continually do in the present. Now, how do we make a sentence? It's just simple. You just have to take a subject and add a verb. A subject is like I, you, we, they, or any plural nouns. So those are plural subjects, while subjects like he, she, it, or Emma, Anna, Mary, the child, the boy are what we called singular subjects. Now, of course, in a sentence, again, we need to add a verb. So verb is an action word, like for example, the verb eat. So I eat, you eat, we eat, or they eat. For singular subjects, we say he eats, she eats, or it eats. For plural subjects, you take the base form of the verb. Base form is the version of the verb without any endings. For example, is, ing, ed, or d. As you can see in our verb eat, it's the root form of the verb. We did not add anything. On the other hand, for singular subjects, it needs also a singular verb. So that's why we added s to our verb here. For singular subjects, we add s or es to our verb to make it also singular. For regular verbs, we need to add an s to the verb. For example, walk becomes walks, climb becomes climbs. Now, verbs ending in s, x, ch, sh or o, we need to add es this time. For example, miss, misses, mix, mixes, watch, watches. We have wash, washes, and go, goes. So that's how you spell the verb. Now, for verbs that end in consonant plus y, you need to change y to I and add es. Like for example, we have study. It ends in consonant plus y, so it becomes studies. Or we have fly. Consonant L plus y becomes flies. For verbs that end in vowel plus y, we just have to add s. For example, play. A here is vowel plus y. We just simply have to add s to the verb, becomes plays. Say becomes says. So again, just be reminded of these rules and be careful of how you spell the verbs because, of course, spellings are also important. Now let's move on to discussing the different uses of simple present tense. The first use is when you talk about habits and routines. Another one is about permanent situations. The third is when you talk about facts and general truths. And of course, scheduled events in the near future, you also need to use simple present tense. And the last is when you talk about states with stative verbs. We are going to discuss all these uses one at a time. We'll start with habits and routines. So what time do you wake up, eat breakfast, or do your homework? Or what time do you usually go to the office? Or what do you usually do during weekends? These are actions that are repetitive. You do them every day, every weekend, every year. Anytime you develop something of a routine, then you have to use simple present tense verbs to describe it. Say for example, we have number 1, the shop closes at 7 p.m. Now this action is done regularly. Now you see a timeline on the screen. If it is a shop that opens for 7 days in a week, you know that every 7 p.m. from Sundays to Saturdays, this shop closes at 7 p.m. You can see that it repeats. Now this is a routine. Our subject here is shop and it is singular, so we need a singular verb also. That's why we added s to our verb, closes. Another example is Pauline practices the piano every day. So again, this is a routine or a habit because it's something that she repeats doing. So Pauline is our subject, while our verb is practices. We added an sy because our subject is singular. Another example is I usually take the train to the office. So it's a routine. And whenever he goes to the office, he takes a train. So I is our subject, which is plural, while take is our verb, which is also plural. So remember, there is no s. Jackson travels twice a year. That means that every year Jackson travels twice. So Jackson is our subject and our verb is travels. Now because our subject is singular, we need to add an s to our verb. Now you can see how frequently and how often the action happens. We have here every day, usually, twice a year. When we talk about routines or habits, we normally use these kinds of expressions. Expressions like every use once, or once a day, or twice a day. Adverbs of frequency such as Usually, often, sometimes, never, always, generally, and others are very common in sentences with the habit use of simple present tense. We also use the present tense to talk about situations that are mostly permanent, like jobs and things that always happen. For example, Timmy lives in California. That means that he lived there at some point in the past, but it's his home right now and will be his home in the future. So it is something that is not going to change. David speaks French. David would not forget how to speak French. They work at a bank. They work in the bank permanently, so it is not something that they do for a week or for days only, but it's a permanent job. So again, do not forget, if you have a singular subject like Timmy and David, you need also singular verbs like lives and speaks. So what we do is we add an s to our verb to make it singular. However, if we have a plural subject, they, you also need a plural verb. We use simple present tense when we talk about facts or general truths. An action or situation is generally believed to be true or a generally accepted fact. It indicates further that the speaker believes that the fact was true before, so that was past, and is true now, and will be true in the future. Air contains oxygen. Is it a fact? Of course it is a fact. So we need to use the present tense of the verb. So air is our subject and our verb is contains with s here because our subject is singular. So this is a general truth, or it's a fact. Another example, California is in America. Is it a fact? Yes. So it's not correct to say California was in America. Our subject is California and our verb is. Singular subject and singular verb. Another example is the earth revolves around the sun. Is this a fact? Of course, this is a fact. It's a general truth. When you make statements that are based on facts, make sure to use simple present tense. Do not use the ing form like when you say the earth is revolving around the sun. We have our subject earth, singular, and our verb revolves with an s to make it singular also. Speakers occasionally use simple present to talk about scheduled events in the near future. And this is most commonly done when talking about public transportation, but it can be used with other scheduled events as well. For example, when we say the party starts at 8 o'clock. If it's a scheduled event in the near future, you can also use the present tense of the verb. Another example is the train leaves tonight at 6 p.m. Or we can also say the class begins tomorrow. Another example is our holiday starts on the 26th of March. So these are scheduled events in the future. So again, it is possible for us to use the simple present tense of the verb instead of future tense. And do not forget our subject and verb agreement here. We have singular subjects, party, train, class. Class is a collective noun, and in this sentence, it is considered a singular subject. Holiday is singular also, so that means that we have added an s to all of our verbs here. Like starts, leaves, begins, and starts. And the last use of simple present tense is when you talk about the states. When you talk about states, You use here stative verbs or non-continuous verbs. Now when we say stative verbs, these are verbs that express a state rather than an action. So they usually relate to thoughts, emotions, relationships, senses, states of being, and even measurements. Now let's try to take a look at this example. Here we have drink, walk, and read. They show activity. There is a physical action. So these verbs are action verbs. On the other hand, verbs like know, like, appear are not really action words. This is what we call state. You just simply describe the situation, that he knows something, that he likes it. It describes a condition. It's not really a physical action, but still they are considered verbs, and they are called stative verbs. Stative verbs relate to thoughts and opinions. Know, remember, think, imagine, believe. So again, these are all verbs. They do not show physical action. I know the answer. Here is our subject, I, and here is our verb, know. Sammy remembers my birthday. So Sammy is our subject, which is singular, and our verb is remembers, which is also singular. We added an S to it. Similarly, stative verbs relate to wants and dislikes. And some of the verbs are love, need, want, hate, like, dislike. For example, when we say he loves to dance, he is our subject. It is a stative verb. Brent needs your help. Subject is Brent. Needs is our verb, singular. We need to put an S. We have a singular verb, so we need to put an S. So it's not correct to say Brent is needing your help. Okay, we should use the present tense of the verb, so it should be Brent needs your help. Stative verbs can also relate to appearance, like look, appear, seem, look like, or sound. Example sentence is you seem very happy. You is our subject. Seem is our verb. This is a stative verb. So you is plural, that's why we use a plural verb without S. Or we could also say it sounds dull to me. So it is our subject. Sounds is our verb. It is singular, that's why we added an S to our verb. Stative verbs also relate to our senses. We have see, hear, smell, taste, feel. Like this example, it tastes like honey. So it is our subject. Verb is tastes. His clothes smell good. Clothes is our subject, while our verb is smell. It's a stative verb. Another use of stative verbs is when you talk about possessions and relation, like when you use these verbs have, own, belong, or possess. For example, I have a phone. Or Joy has time to call me. I is our subject, and this is our stative verb, while Joy is our subject in the second sentence and has is our verb. Joy is singular while has is also singular. Alright, let's have a review. Again, we use simple present tense when we talk about actions that are repeated or that are usual. When you have a singular subject, all you need to do is to add an S or an ES to your verb. If you have a plural subject, you need to use the base form of the verb. We also talked about the main uses of simple present tense. That is to talk about habits or routines. For example, Jackson travels twice a year. So it's his habit to travel twice a year. Another use is when we talk about permanent situations, Like Timmy lives in California. So again, it's wrong to say Timmy is living in California, because when you use the ing, the continuous form, that means that the action is just temporary. But for permanent situations, you need to use the present tense of the verb. The third use is for facts and general truths, like the earth revolves around the sun. Of course, it's true. It's a fact. So we need the present tense of the verb. Number 4 is when you talk about scheduled events in the near future. Still correct to use present tense if it's about scheduled events in the near future. For example, the class begins tomorrow. And the last is when you talk about states or conditions or state of being, using stative verbs. For example, I have a phone. Again, do not forget, when your subject is singular, like Jackson, Timmy, Earth, class, your verbs should also be singular. So how do you form that? Is you add an s to your verb. Like the verbs travels, lives, revolves, and begins. However, if your subject is plural, then you also need a plural verb. Now let's check your understanding whether you have understood our topic about the simple present tense by answering this activity. Directions: fill in the blanks with appropriate simple present tense form of the verb given inside the parentheses. So I've here 10 items for you, and I'll give you time to answer that, and I'll get back to you to check your work. Okay? And your timer starts now. Alright, so let's now check your answers. Let's have number 1. The plane blank at 6:30. So what's the answer? The plane arrives at 6:30. Plane is our subject, which is singular. That's why we have an S here. This is about scheduled events. Number 2, I will phone you when he blank back. So what's the answer? I will phone you when he comes back. So he is the subject. Number 3, unless we blank now, we can't be there on time. What's the answer? Unless we start now we can't be there on time. So we is our subject, which is plural, so we need a plural verb also. Number 4, the sun blank in the east. The sun rises in the east. So this is a truth or a general truth or a fact. So sun is our subject. Our verb is rises with the S. Number 5, the next term blank on Monday. So the next term begins on Monday. So the next term subject here, we have the verb begins on Monday. This is another scheduled event. Number 6, she blank an engineer. So what be verb are we going to use here? So what are again our be verbs in the present tense? It could either be is or are. So she is an engineer. So she, of course, is singular. So we use a singular verb is. Another is number 7, they blank our relatives. So another be verb, is it is or are? Of course, it should be are because our subject is plural they. So we need a plural verb. Number 8, Mary Jane blank in Canada. So what's the answer? Mary Jane lives in Canada. Mary Jane is singular, while our verb is also singular with S. So again, do not use ing form if you're referring to situations that are permanent. So here, Mary Jane lives permanently in Canada. So you need to use the present tense and not living in Canada. Number 9, let's wait till he blank his work. What's the answer? It is finishes. Let's wait till he is our subject. Our verb is finishes. We added an es because our subject is singular, so we need a singular verb. Finishes. Number 10, please ring me up as soon as he blank. What's the answer? It is arrives. Please ring me up as soon as he arrives. So where is our subject? He, and our verb arrives. Again, we have added an s to make it singular because our subject is singular. Alright, there you go. We are done answering our activity. I do hope that you got all the answers correctly. Now that's it for our lesson for today. This is just the first topic for the series of lessons on the tenses that we will discuss. And please do subscribe and click that notification bell. See you guys in my next videos. Have a great day. Goodbye.